All right, Exodus 2, let's call this one pity. Why? Because that is exactly what Moses is shown by Pharaoh's daughter as he is cast off by his family into the river, understanding that this is a time when the oppression of the Hebrews continues and it is extended past the midwives' decision to disobey Pharaoh's order to kill the male Hebrew babies. And now Moses' family, blessed with his birth, have to find a way to avoid killing him under Pharaoh's edict. And so they send him down the river. Ironically enough, Pharaoh's daughter finds him and she shows pity on him, helping us understand that in our own lives, no matter how far God takes us, no matter how high height he helps us to reach, that if we don't have someone to show pity on us, we never get there. So ultimately, the thing about Moses that we'll see in this chapter is over and over again, he is not simply a consumer of pity. He is one who demonstrates that same characteristic in his attitude towards others, not turning his eye and pretending that he does not see wrongdoing, but putting himself at personal risk to intercede and stop wrongdoing as he sees it. In many ways, distinguishing himself the way that we saw Judah try to intercede on multiple occasions for both his brother Joseph and Benjamin. But let's see Moses do it as we pick up his story in verse 11 of chapter 2. One day when Moses had grown up, he went out to his people and looked on their burdens, and he saw an Egyptian beating a Hebrew, one of his people. He looked this way and that, and seeing no one, he struck down the Egyptian and hid him in the sand. Understand, beyond the murder, that's a sin. He murdered in defense of a man who was being wronged. That part of it, Moses still needs credit for, even if he expressed his distress at the wrongdoing the wrong way. But it's not going to stop there. He's going to understand how to appropriately respond to wrongdoing as well. Continuing in verse 13, when he went out the next day, behold, two Hebrews were struggling together. And he said to the man in the wrong, why do you strike your companion? So he's not just picking on the Egyptians. He even discerns between brothers in Israel. Look, bro, you're doing wrong. Why? And he's going to get the typical response you get for putting yourself at risk and trying to intercede and stand up for what's right. He gets backlash. And so the man who was doing wrong further promotes wrong by bringing up what Moses did the previous day. And so Moses knows it's time to flee. But the fact that he is getting an improper response to his gestures and his efforts to do the right thing is not going to quench his spirit and his desire to stand up for those who need help. Why? Because as he flees to Midian, we're going to see him interceding again, picking up in verse 16. Now, the priest of Midian had 7 daughters, and they came and drew water and filled the troughs to water their father's flock. The shepherds came and drove them away, but Moses stood up and saved them and watered their flock. Understand, he's going to get a wife out of this. So much like we saw Rebekah be rewarded for her random act of kindness by getting to marry a very rich man in Isaac, we're going to see Moses as he has basically been thrust out of Egypt and he is now a fugitive. He is going to be blessed in spite of his hardship by showing kindness. He's going to get a wife out of this. But beyond what we can get out of showing kindness, we're seeing a persistent part of Moses' character of showing pity to others and putting himself at personal risk to intercede on their behalf. And oh, if we could rediscover that level of manhood today. See, he had an example set for him early in life, not necessarily by the men in his life, by the women in his life and in his nation who showed courage. And Moses saying, wait a minute, I can't let the women step up and put themselves at personal risk and not pick up the mantle and pay that forward. He repeatedly puts himself at risk, not just when it's one-on-one against an Egyptian or interceding vocally, but when he has to go against shepherds, don't miss the plural, he's putting himself at risk. And so as hard as it can be to do the right thing, God willing, we will look to Moses as example, as one who set the standard, that it's not okay as a man to just turn your head and pretend that things are okay in the presence of wrongdoing. God willing, we will pray for the courage to step up as Moses did and develop the character trait that said in the presence of wrongdoing, I can't simply sit silent and act like nothing's going wrong.